All right, welcome back to Niners Nightly as we get you ready for the Niners and the Eagles coming up this weekend. I'm going to Philly tomorrow. Looking forward to it. But tonight we've got Todd Husak on the line, on the Uma guest line to look ahead to the matchup this weekend. Todd, how are you?
Doing well. The disappointment of last Saturday has worn off. Now I'm excited about the playoffs. I think we all had such high expectations based on the previous few weeks with the Niners and how well they looked offensively and how great Brock was playing and all the momentum and how big of a game that was, an opportunity to secure the 1 seed. And then they really just got pushed around and had a really tough performance, ran into a better team. There was not many excuses. They just got outplayed up front on both sides. And so let's see how they can regroup with a more banged up team. I think Trent Williams and Ricky Pearsall question marks are big. But I think they can overcome them. I think this is a team that believes they can win, and they're going to have an opportunity against a Philly team that is certainly not the same unit that took home the Super Bowl last year. And we'll see how they come out and play.
Let's look ahead, but before we look ahead, let's look back at Seattle for a second. And just, one thing that was really kind of alarming is that Mike McDonald kept his 2 safeties deep a lot of the night. The Niners, were going up against light boxes, and they were having a hard time running the ball, even with, 6 guys in the box. I mean, that's how good those 6 guys really were for Seattle. And I would imagine Fangio's going to copy some of that this week. You're getting the best of all worlds, right? You're only rushing 4 when you're rushing, and you've got the 2 deep safeties, which kind of really send a loud message that we're not going to give you anything over the top. And it just seemed like Seattle was rallying so aggressively to the underneath targets that didn't matter who caught it. There was somebody running at him who was a step away from detonating on him, and the 49ers couldn't get anything going offensively. What's the counter? I mean, obviously you got to run them out of it, but they couldn't run them out of it. Well, what's the experience like trying to throw it against a team that's dropping 5 guys into coverage?
Well, the good news is I don't think Philly's as good as Seattle up front. They're good. But Seattle they were winning all their matchups up front, and then they had speed at that linebacker and safety level where, Larry, we were sitting together up top. There were a couple times during that game where it looked like the Niners were able to get the edge or get something going out in the perimeter, and all of a sudden a linebacker scrapes inside out and makes the play for no gain. And so I think the good news is Seattle is better than Philly up front. Philly's still good, and I think what we're going to have to see is a little bit more creative play calling and execution for the 49ers, where they're moving the pocket a little bit more. They're figuring out ways to get to the edge, because up front they're really having a hard time moving guys between the tackles and creating some leverage at the point of attack to where McCaffrey could get what we saw for 2 weeks against Indy. And really you go back the previous few weeks, but Indy and Chicago, McCaffrey was making his first cut 3, 4, 5 yards past the line of scrimmage, sometimes not getting touched until he's further down the field. So against Seattle, it just wasn't there. So I think creating some movement for Brock Purdy to get outside, doing some more things in the run game where they're stretching that Philly team horizontally. And all of a sudden, once they start to play a little bit wider, maybe you can attack between the tackles. But being more productive on first down, there were too many second and third and longs. And when you give a good pass rush team the opportunity to pin their ears back and go, we saw what Seattle did. A couple scrambles by Brock Purdy, he needed them. And it wasn't, there was a big gap between that. He's having to sneak through tight windows in the pass rush and create some positive yardage. The offense works better when Brock's able to hit his back foot, deliver on time, deliver on the money. He didn't have that opportunity very often against Seattle. So I think if they can create some misdirection, maybe use Philly's aggressiveness against them, that might be the best way to start the game plan. And then convert on third downs. That's we saw it against Seattle. We saw it against Houston, even Jacksonville. If the Niners don't get off to a good start and they don't run a lot of plays early in the game, it really disrupts Kyle Shanahan's rhythm and play calling because he's not able to put things on the field that get the defense to react, and he can counter off it. When they're only running 6 plays in the first quarter, that's a bad omen for the 49er offense for the rest of the game. So get off to a good start, not just on the scoreboard. We've all seen Philly fans overreact. If the 49ers, there was some backlash against them for sitting their starters and losing that game against Washington. If the Niners get off to a hot start, that crowd can be fickle, and they can turn against the Eagles. That would be a huge step in the right direction for the 49ers. Get some boo birds out. Those Eagles fans, I shared the story earlier in the week, but I was on the team in Washington when they went there. And we had a receiver, Irving Fryer, who played 3 years in Philly. He was an Eagle for 3 years, had 3 really good seasons there. He gets hurt in a game where he injures his neck, and he's laying on the field, and the crowd is cheering. Those are tough fans out there. So I think, and really all season, the Eagles have seemed to be in some turmoil with the offense being unhappy and Hurts and A.J. Brown, and they just don't seem to be on the same page. Create some doubt in that stadium, both on the sidelines and in the crowd. That would be a big win for the 49ers.
I'll tell you, I was looking at some of the matchups and thinking about this game and all the different things going into it. I'll tell you, the thing that stands out to me is that I always ask, is there a blueprint? Is there a blueprint? Has somebody beaten this Philly team the way that the 49ers potentially could beat them? And I thought, I'm going to go back to the Black Friday game after Thanksgiving when Chicago went to Philly, and Chicago ran 47 times that day for 281 yards, 6 yards a pop. Kyle Monangi had 22 carries for 130. That could be Christian McCaffrey, 6'9" a carry or 5'9" a carry. DeAndre Swift had 18 carries for 125, 6'9" a carry. Both scored a touchdown. That could be Brian Robinson. You know what? If the 49ers are going to win the game, and I think they've got to be a little bit more dramatic with their game plan than they maybe normally would be. I think normally Shanahan always thinks balance. Let's just be balanced, offensive balance. But I really think that this week that the task is greater because the defense is leaning on Eric Kendricks and Kazir White and guys that they just signed earlier in the week. And you're going to have to protect this defense. And to me, I heard Adam Kaplan with the boys earlier say that, the temperatures are supposed to be in the 40s, maybe even mid 40s. It might be actually pretty warm for, Philly standards in January, but it's going to be very windy. And you played quarterback, and wind is not a quarterback's friend. I would say I'd like to see a run-heavy plan where McCaffrey gets 22 carries and Brian Robinson gets 15 to 20 carries, and they just run it and run it and run it some more. The Bears did it. Why not the 49ers?
Yeah, wind is the worst to play in. I think you can handle the elements, but when it's windy and it throws that passing game off just a little bit, and we had talked about it last week, what makes Brock Purdy so effective is his ability to put it on the front shoulder or where it needs to be, where the receiver can make a play, catch and run, whether it's Kittle over the middle and he can catch and make that first guy miss. All of a sudden, if it's blowing, that ball, instead of being a foot out in front, is 2 feet behind. And we saw it with Christian McCaffrey, that interception last week. God, the 49ers convert on that, and they're only down 3 with 5.5 minutes left. That ball was thrown behind. Still a catch Christian McCaffrey typically makes. I don't think he was 100%. Well, of course he's not 100%. He's carried the ball a lot this season. He didn't look like himself, I think, last game. Let's hope he's had a chance to rest, get healthy, and it is closer to 100% this week. So I agree. If they can go out and run the ball effectively, that changes everything. That makes Shanahan's job that much easier to call plays and dial it up. All of a sudden, the play action you would think is better because the defense is biting up on the run game. In the previous 2 weeks, they had done that effectively. They had gotten the run game going, which I think we saw some big play action passes. We've seen chunk, not against it takes Seattle out, but the previous month of the season, we had seen chunk plays for the 49ers that we had not seen the rest of the season. So instead of a 14-play drive that finishes in the end zone, they're running 6-play drives. And that quick strike ability, again, will be key in can they you hate to say they have to outscore Philly, but the way the defense looked against Seattle had a chance to break that game open. They could not. Credit the 49ers defense for holding tight in the red zone and forcing some field goals, which Seattle didn't convert on. But having that ability to strike quickly, and if they can run the ball effectively, you can hold on to the ball and limit the touches, maybe frustrate Philly a little bit. Starting off with a powerful run game can be, I think that's every play caller's dream. It wasn't there last week. Philly is still pretty good up front. They're not Seattle, but they're still pretty good. I think it's going to take more than the run up the middle. We'll see. Maybe we'll see some more power or some misdirection in the run game to try to open up the holes. The cutback was effective a couple weeks ago. Maybe they use that a little bit more, but I agree. If they can run the ball 30 plus times, that's usually the blueprint for a 49er win and a very successful day offensively.
Maybe a little bit more gap scheme like we saw against Atlanta, maybe a little bit more duo, and they're trying to, get it up in there and see if they can have some advantages. Let's talk about Purdy for a second. I mean, first of all, I saw Kaplan mention that he doesn't think the Eagles' pass defense, has really gone up against a top-tier receiving running back. So I would definitely test that with Christian McCaffrey. You have arguably the best receiving running back. But let's talk about Purdy for a second, because I think he's interesting. I think everybody who watches him would agree. I mean, he's, despite what some people want to knock him or whatever, he's a damn good quarterback. He's a timing-based anticipation thrower. He's very accurate. He's very competitive. He's got great quickness, and he's phenomenal when he gets in rhythm. But you played this position, so I'll throw this to you. What was the best way, back in the day for you to get into rhythm? What's, do you think, the best way for the 49ers to try to get Brock, as they say, into a good rhythm?
I think completing your first couple passes. We saw against Indy, he threw it into coverage, but George Kittle makes that big play over the middle, and that offense, you change field position, you have a little momentum, and all of a sudden Brock is hitting his back foot and throwing it to the perimeter, and they hit a screen, and everything just seems to roll. Getting those first couple first downs, whether it's a screen or a quick slant or something where you're feeling good. Okay, this is how we drew it up. These are our starters. I know what to expect. I hit my back foot. The pass protection was good. All right, I'm feeling good about this game plan. I think that mentality, as opposed to, it's 2nd and 12 or it's 3rd and 9. This is not what we drew up. We're going to have to dig into our third down package earlier than we hoped. They've been great in overcoming that. They're one of the best third down teams in all of football. But part of that is their ability to create 3rd and shorts. And I think this is a game where they're going to go for it on 4th down. You give yourself 4 downs to get 10 yards, that will change things. So special teams, right? Getting a key special teams play early in the game where you're not backed up inside your own 20 gives the play caller a little bit more freedom. So all of those things, it's really a general feeling of momentum coming into the week. They're prepared, they're healthy. And then you execute those first few plays like you drew it up, like you talked about in the meeting rooms. All of those things, I think, create some of that momentum, which we've seen Brock Purdy. If he gets off to, the counter to that is Chicago. He throws a pick 6 on the very first play, and they're still able to come back, score touchdowns on their next few possessions. But there was a big special teams play involved, and all of a sudden they're up and rolling. So I feel very you mentioned Brock. Brock Purdy's an exceptional quarterback. The sample size is big enough. He is much closer to the player we saw responsible for 5 touchdowns in back-to-back weeks than the guy we saw a week ago, where he didn't have much time to throw and very few opportunities to get the ball spread around. So I mentioned it earlier, but getting maybe move the pocket a little bit more, getting some screens involved in the game plan early, where that might minimize the pass rush or take advantage of their over pursuing. Moving the sticks early in the game. Brock Purdy is tough to stop once he gets going.
If you just looked at this thing offense for offense, you would say, man, the Niners offense has got more more explosive ability than, believe me, when I look at the Eagles, I see a good quarterback. I see a system that works. I see a really good running back in Barkley, great weapons, a solid offensive line. I think they're really solid across the board, but their offensive line has struggled this year. Patullo, the OC, is getting ripped. And then when you look at some of the games that, some of the common opponents, like, let's just take a look at a couple of them. The Niners played the Bears. The Niners scored 40 against the Bears. Philly played the Bears. Philly scored 15 points against the Bears. We'll take the New York Giants. The Niners scored 34 points against the New York Giants at MetLife. Philly scored 17 against the New York Giants. So, you look at those numbers and you just sit there and you go, wait a second. Do the Niners just have a better offense? I think Philly's offense in some ways is kind of enigmatic. And the Niners defense is obviously hurt and tired and young in some spots and inexperienced. But, it's very, very odd situation. Hurts has won a Super Bowl. Their O-line was the best in the league a year ago. They got a bevy of weapons. The Niners are last in the NFL with 20 sacks. They're signing guys like Kendricks and Kaiser White, off the street. They coming off a game where they missed 18 tackles. But I don't know what to expect in this matchup. What do you think, Todd? Can the Niner defense keep the 49ers in this game? That's really all they're asking for. Just keep them in it.
Yeah, I agree with you that the Eagles, on paper, look pretty darn good. They have a Super Bowl winning quarterback in Jalen Hurts, who I think is incredibly overrated. I thought that last year as well. He's got some great weapons. Everybody talks about the security blankets that Brock Purdy has and all the weapons and Kittle and Shanahan and McCaffrey. Hurts has a way better situation. 2 first-round wide receivers and one of the best running backs in the game in Saquon Barkley, and the best offensive line, and a really good defense. The pressure's not on him to score 30 points a game. They've won a lot of games 17-14 in his career. I think where they're dangerous is if they get Saquon Barkley going, and they've got to be watching that Seattle game licking their chops because of how well Seattle ran the ball and some wide open run lanes. They have A.J. Brown, who, if he's on, he's a threat to catch it and run or win the deep pass as well as anybody in the league. But they also have a lot of 3 and outs. They're one of the best red zone teams, but in terms of getting to the red zone, they're 28th in the league in trips inside the red zone. So they don't have a lot of long sustained drives. They're not a consistent offensive team. They have big playability, but if you can create a long field for them and put them in a lot of third downs, that's what the 49ers have done as well as anybody. They have the best special teams unit in all of football, which is amazing. That turnaround, credit Brant Boyer and the job he's done. And the defense comes up with enough third down stops and certainly red zone stops. You would expect, if they limit the big plays in the short fields, I like the 49ers defensive matchup. It'll be a challenge with a bunch of linebackers. Like there was a point last week, I didn't even know the guy. I was looking at the roster like, who is this guy playing linebacker when D. Winters went out? Like they're so
Garrett Wallow,
yeah, exactly. They're so depleted, but they still have, I think, a young front four. If Alfred Collins can come out and make some play, they need a few big plays. And Upton Stout has been the guy that has seemingly come up with a bunch of those big plays over the last month of the season. He's playing at a super high level. The secondary, I trust. They're going to have their work cut out for him with Smith and Brown. But any big play, if they can create something up front, force them into third and long situations as opposed to 3rd and 2s, I like their matchup. I do. And I think the 49er offense is much better. They're much more consistent, certainly, than the Eagles offense, even without Pearsall, who they've been out without most of the season. Trent Williams is a different story. They really need him up front. As well as Pleasance has played, I think having that secure left tackle spot where he's one of the best in the game makes their run game more effective. But I like the 49ers matchup versus the Eagles defense because they've shown the ability over the season to consistently score points, move the ball, create better field position at the very least, and they're really good on third downs and the red zone. They're one of the best teams in the red zone. They're averaging 4 trips a game inside the red zone, and Philly's about 2.4. So Certainly those numbers point to consistency, but limit the big plays, limit the short fields for Philly. And I think the 49ers defense has shown they'll come up with ways to create stops.
If today is any indication, Trent is going to go and Pearsall's not going to go. Trent did practice today. He moved around a little gingerly, but he was out there practicing, or at least warming up for practice. Pearsall had his jersey on, so he may have practiced after we left, but he was on a side field when we left. He's got a PCL injury that he re-aggravated, in addition to an ankle injury, but he's got a PCL knee injury that he re-aggravated against Chicago. And he hasn't practiced all week. This one bugs me because, I mean, the 49ers don't have a deep threat. I mean, they really don't. I mean, Pearsall's the only guy who's, that 4.4 speed. I mean, Cowing came back to practice this week. Shanahan told me yesterday he's not going to play this week. Jordan Watkins has never gotten on the field this year. And so Pearsall, who ran on a side field, today, I'm not sure if he's going to go. I would say it looks like he's not going to go, which is frustrating because it seems like, he's been out. He's missed an awful lot of time this year with this PCL injury. What do you think? I mean, how does the game change in your mind if Pearsall can't go?
Well, they haven't had a deep threat really all season. Most of the 49ers don't throw the ball down the field. And Brock Purdy's really good at pushing, but he throws a great deep ball. And that some of his best plays in the preseason in practice that we were watching, he looked like he was ready to have a breakout year with some of the deep threats and Pearsall healthy and all those weapons. But without him, which they've been without, a lot of their big pass plays are the one to Kittle down the middle against Indy. That ball traveled the field pretty long ways, but it's a lot of catch and runs in breaking routes where he puts it on the money and they're able to catch and break free like Juwan Jennings a few weeks ago. The receivers did very little last week and have a hard time separating. I was hoping for more from Demarcus Robinson, who I think could be a guy, but he just hasn't shown up. So not having a receiver who can consistently get open and make plays down the field, it's nothing new for the 49ers. Again, that's where Kyle Shanahan has been so good. Without a deep threat, he's still able to manufacture yards and points. And he's going to have to get creative, I think, this week. Maybe it's Tonjes a little bit more with maybe 2 tight end sets or use check coming out of the backfield, figuring out ways to spread the ball around and get, 12, 15 yards, which really for the 49ers have been big plays. Way too many drives it's 5 yards at a time. If they can rip off chunks, that's a huge break. It starts with protection. So protecting Brock Purdy and allowing him a pocket where he can deliver the ball on time and accurately. But you would like to see a receiver step up and somebody break out with 6 or 7 catches, which, I mean, the Jets have been – I saw a stat, the Jets leading receiver in Garrett Wilson had 395 yards, and he hasn't played since week 6. So there are a few wide receiving cores that are not as productive as the 49ers, but there's not many. And so figuring out a way to move the chains without a consistently open wide receiver is going to be a challenge. Now they can attack the middle with Kittle and Tonjes. Maybe it's McCaffrey. McCaffrey's been the guy really all season. If somebody's finishing with 7 or 8 catches, it's usually him. And maybe they can figure out a way to have him break a couple. But you're right. No Pearsall hurts because he is the one guy who can stretch a defense or make plays running the deeper routes. If he's out, which I think we expect him to be, it's just another challenge, another hurdle for this 49er offense to have to overcome.
No question. Looking at the other side of the thing with the Eagles passing game against the Niner defense, I was looking at some of these numbers this week. I didn't realize, but the Eagles throw a ton of hitch passes and a ton of curls to their guys. A.J. Brown, 21% of his targets this year are hitches or curls. Devontae Smith, 30% of his targets this year, hitches or curls. Dallas Goedert, 20% of his targets this year were hitches or curls. They like to throw the hitch and get the ball to the perimeter as fast as possible. But they also push the ball down the field. And I was looking at this. Eagles push the ball down the field at the 4th highest rate, 14.3%. They're 7th best at doing this on EPA on deep throws, 7th best in the league. On the other side, the Niners defensively are 29th in EPA at defending deep throws. I would say this could be a huge factor in the game, especially if the weather's pretty good and the deep ball becomes a part of the repertoire. I can imagine Philly looking at those numbers and really testing the 49ers deep. What have you seen from the Niners coverage? I mean, you're a guy who played the position and studied how corners react to the deep ball and safeties react to the deep ball. How do you feel like the Niners, who are pretty young in the secondary, have reacted at corner and safety to the deep balls this year?
Yeah, I think it's a big challenge to go up against 2 wide receivers like Brown and Smith. They are really talented players who Devontae Smith can run by pretty much any corner in the league. So the 49ers, those numbers aren't great. And I think the big challenge is the safeties. We saw Caleb Williams make a few big throws down the field. He took advantage of it. He threw it over the safety's head a couple times, or he had the long where he scrambled and hit the tight end for the touchdown, Loveland over the middle. But that was a deep throw. I think it goes back to Jalen Hurts being a little limited, and that's why they throw a lot of those hitches. And it seems I agree with you. It's either underneath or they're taking shots, and they have. That's where the Eagles' offense is a little bit different. They have 2 wide receivers who can win down the field. And that's where I think it's imperative to force them to be one-dimensional. Take away the run game and trust your secondary. It's not easy going up against those 2 wide receivers, but trust them. I really like Upton Stout in that nickel spot, both in the run game and his ability to play tough in the slot. But it will come down to, can those defensive backs make plays on the ball without pass interference? And if they can, I think early in the game, A.J. Brown will get frustrated, and you could see it going south for them if they're not able to convert on a couple shots that they. To your point, if I'm the offensive coordinator, I'm going to take some shots early in the game and test that secondary and see what they got. If so much of it is early, how do they perform early? Because if they're not able to stop it early, it could be a long day of them continuing to push it down the field. So I do like that matchup. I think the 49ers secondary, while the numbers you mentioned aren't great, they play tough. They're usually in position. It's not like they're out of position down the field. They just don't always make the play. Certainly haven't made a ton of interceptions this year. But Hurts will throw it up for grabs and trust his guys on the outside to do it. We'll see if they're up for it. I think Mustafa is awesome in the run game. He's a big hitter. But he's a guy that might get picked on in the passing game early in this game. Let's see if he's up for the challenge. A young safety who's talented. We'll see if he's up to it.
One last one. You probably have a pretty good idea about Vic Fangio. He was with the Niners. He was with Stanford before. A lot of people think that Vic is going to be the difference. He's had the upper hand in 4 matchups against Shanahan, but Shanahan's done it with lesser quarterbacks in those matchups. They did trade for Jalen Phillips. They've been a different team since they got him. Nakobe Dean is an excellent blitzer at linebacker. They got big Jalen Carter, who's a great movement player, and Jordan Davis, who's maybe the biggest defensive tackle going right now. There's a lot to like on defense. Kaplan told Copeland and Papa earlier, if the Niners can protect against this defense, this game will be close. I do see a mismatch because of Jennings' size going up against Adoree Jackson. But talk to me about Fangio. Why is he held in such high regard? He plays a 3-4 defense, but he's done it at the college level. He's done it at the pro level. Some people think he wasn't a very good head coach, but I mean, this guy is one of, if not the best defensive coordinator going right now. He's right there with Spags, with Saleh, with all of them. He's really, really good. Why is he so good? Do you know Vic at all, by the way?
I do. Yeah, I've had some meals with him and some beers with him. He's a great guy. I think he's a career coach who loves football, loves to break down the film. He's almost like a defensive Shanahan, where he is super well prepared. His defenses, much like Saleh, those guys are well coached. He is great at not just coming up with a game plan, but getting his guys better. Everybody's on the same page. Again, you don't see a lot of breakdowns in scheme. They they're well coached, so they just go out and play football, and they know what to do. Everybody's worked together for a while. So he's an exceptional coach, but this is still a defensive unit. You look at the second half against the Cowboys, and the Cowboys put up some points on them. While he's great at scheming, but a lot of it is trusting his guys to just make plays. And we're gonna put you in a position. Everybody's gonna be on the same page. Now win your matchup. And they don't always win. And this is a defense that, while they've been great the second half of the season, there's still opportunities to score, to your point, if the Niners can protect. So I'd like to see some quick passes. Don't put a ton of pressure on the 49er offensive line early in the game. Like I said, move the pocket, some screens, but try to get them a little frustrated. Try to get them to over pursue, to stop McCaffrey, and maybe somebody else make some plays in the passing game early in the game, where all of a sudden they're second guessing their initial reads. And you can see some lanes for 49ers to move the ball and score some points.
All right, I'm going with the Niners to win the first half, sustain drives, get a little, maybe even get a big play on special teams or defense. And I think the 49ers are going to have a first half lead. I think the Eagles are going to come back with a big roaring second half. And I like the Niners at the end, 23-20. Give me your prediction.
Give me Niners 28-17.
Ooh.
I think the Niners are ready. I think the Niners team that we saw the previous few weeks is the Niners we can see showing up this weekend. I think they're hungry. You got some guys who understand that the window is certainly not closed, but this is a special team. We've seen them. I think what was frustrating for me last week is there were a few plays where they just were all season. They seem to make those plays, like Gross Matos falling on that fumble, but not coming up with it. And McCaffrey making that catch instead of fumbling it to the defender. The Niners have made those plays all season. Last week, they didn't. I'm expecting some magic to come back. They're going to get a big playoff win on the road, and the offense is going to lead the way.
28-17. You heard it straight from Todd's mouth. I'm going 23-20. We both like the Niners. Todd, awesome to have you by on KMBR. It's been great to sit up in the in the booth and watch the games with you this year. I look forward to one more, at least one more, maybe Super Bowl Sunday at Levi's.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Have a great night, man. Thanks for jumping on.
Take care.
Todd Husak. More straight ahead. It's Niners Nightly on the Sports Leader.